how DPS meters ruined the world of Warcraft. Okay, the DPS meters.
DPS meters destroyed World of Warcraft, and it's all people are obsessing about nowadays. Players get kicked out of groups and guilds, and they get called out. Did we all forget what made WoW special for us? We're diving deep today
to see exactly how DPS meters destroyed World of Warcraft.
Okay.
and how we can get back that special feeling that WoW had for us, and why other games just don't use DPS meters. If anything, DPS meters forever changed World of Warcraft. It first of all created the concept of meta. Obviously the meta is not a concept just for WoW, but in terms of WoW, it created basically discrimination between people inviting and not inviting each other into groups, and you being able to play or not play the spec. Listen, you can actually get way easier into groups by playing your spec if that spec is the meta spec. It also created guides. Funny enough, that's how we started doing World of Warcraft content.
I definitely do agree that like DPS meters are a big reason why a lot of people are getting gatekept, but I think it's the main reason is just like people want to play with the best people that they can, right? Same thing where people do gear checks for raids now, gear score and stuff like that. I do think it's a little bit, you know, to in some degrees like kind of like over the top with how much people do it, but I don't necessarily think it's the DPS meters' fault. I personally like DPS meters. I think for me, I agree with what you're saying as well, Foodlebar. I think DPS meters are something, for me personally, that like makes raiding fun. Like I can like, you know, have a DPS meter and I just, okay, I do pretty good. Like let me see if I can push some more damage. I don't really go super anal about it, but I know for some people it is, right? Not true, they rather invite a lower score meta class than a 300 Ryo score of meta class. Meta doesn't always mean top DPS. Meta in retail plays a lot of utility and other factors. Yeah, retail is definitely a lot different in that regard, where people will always, you know, bring the best possible comp, right? And people will have the best possible gear for it. People who don't care about the DPS meters are always at the bottom. I don't know. I just think it's fun personally. Like DPS meters, I like it. I just think it's a fun thing personally, right? Anyone who wants WoW without DPS meters is clearly not a pumper. That's true.
And the guides created a premise of people needing to research their spec before they can actually play because they were expected to do so, essentially taking them outside of their game and looking on websites or YouTube videos to figure out exactly how to best perform with their spec. And of course, guides are not something specific to World of Warcraft.
No.
There are guides in pretty much most competitive video games nowadays. I'm thinking Diablo 4, I'm thinking League of Legends, I'm thinking even Final Fantasy 14. I'm sure there are some guys there on how to best create your animal class. I don't know anything about Final Fantasy 14, but what I do know is that because of the guides, it essentially pushed the devs to create more complex and in-depth specs to kind of counteract the fact that the way to figure out how a spec plays and how to play better has become a little bit more transparent or a little bit easier, and took away some of the discovery part that the player used to do to kind of figure out where their spec is. And that
I don't necessarily agree with it. I think that's just like the nature of humans though. If there's an easier way to figure out something in terms of the guides and stuff like that, people will use it. Like people will go out of their way to like why would you try to make your own stuff when you could just look up the best one and like do it like that, right? I would say so. It became really cringe when I started simming gear and rotation. I personally don't really care about simming too much and like, you know, doing all that sweaty things. But some people do it and some people enjoy it, and that's completely fine. But overall, the general like consensus is that like players are more available, like the information is so much more available out there, so a lot of people will just look it up. You know, there's a lot of people that will just look up guides on how to like find all the bonfires when playing Dark Souls for the first time, you know, whereas like back in the day they wouldn't, but maybe they would have done it if the accessibility was there. Elite, thank you for the tier 3, by the way, for 11 months. Humans have no critical thinking ability anymore. Ask Reddit everything, never figure out things on their own, not just in gaming. I think that's why, for me, SOD was very, very magical in many ways, because it was a lot of discovering and things like that. Obviously, now it's kind of like that magic is a little bit gone with all the stuff because it's already all discovered. But there's going to be a new wave of that with the new phases too, right? So yeah, simming is worth in retail sometimes. So many variables with trinkets and stats. I get that. Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. Yeah. You can't be top 5 DPS if you don't grind your biz. It's so consumer choice from Blizzard. I mean, obviously it's an MMO. It's all about the grind.
led us to
Yeah.
having more complex specs and button bloat.
thank you for the 17
Yeah, I'm
months.
looking at you, Enhancement Shaman. God damn, that's so many buttons, man. Are
Oh, God.
DPS meters even necessary? Well, in some games such as Lost Ark, DPS meters are bannable. And is that a good thing? Well, I don't know, but for sure, what I do know is that some games don't have DPS meters, period, like Diablo 4, and they are still very fun. Unbiased.
Yeah, but they're still extremely meta though. Like you still need to look up the guides if you want to do well. You still need to do certain things if you want to do well. And in an MMO, you know, if you're grouping with other people, so regardless if there's DPS beaters or not, people will still find ways to gauge your, you know, gear level or skill level or whatever the hell. There will always be ways of doing it, you know? What's up, Mr. Moffat? I'll be doing great in your summer mansion. Love from cold and windy Denmark. It's a little bit cold here today. I think it's like 10 degrees, Moffat.
Opinion. And fun is an important part because sometimes you just want to sit down, fire up your game and have some fun and not worry about min-maxing your build, spending time to find that one thing that makes you 2% better instead of just going out there and killing shit. Most people get zero added value from DPS.
Parses, it's just BFD. Yeah, but if people enjoy parsing in BFD, just let them enjoy it, right? I don't think like trying to gatekeep fun is a good thing, right? I don't know. Yeah, I've always been of the idea that parses are a little bit of a meme. They are. I mean, parses are memes. You can literally make specific groups and like cheese certain bosses to increase your own parses. Doesn't really matter, but I think it's fun. It's fun to gauge some sort of like performance in some way, you know?
Because for most people, it's just another source of validation. Other people will not even use DPS meters, period.
Okay.
Because why would they? They just want to pop into the game and just slay
Just for
stuff
casual
and
players.
loot the stuff from the slayed stuff. Simple. Why can't games just be simple? All of this hard focus on the DPS meters can create situations where players can just ignore mechanics because of DPS meters. Mechanics
culture.
have become more and more complicated, not just because the DPS meters, but because of what the DPS meters created, this meta of figuring out the data on your screen more efficiently. And now everything is a lot more complicated. And because everything is more complicated and you're focused on maximizing your big dips, then you end up ignoring mechanics and you wipe your group, which is not fun for anybody. This creates a pattern and a situation where people are just disconnected from the actual game whenever they're focused on their meters and how much damage they're actually doing, or healing, of course.
I agree with you guys. I don't think it has anything to do with DPS meters. I think it's just like the nature of how people are nowadays. Like people are just like, you know, they will try to like min-max their stuff and like do the best that they possibly can. I don't really think the DPS meters are the cause of this, right, at all. People just want to rush and pump. Yeah, exactly. I think it's more like a people thing, right? We'll finish the video, chat.
Not only takes away from the fun aspect of the game of being in the moment, but it also takes away some of the chill and some of the fun that the game can have. And that's only on the individual level, because on a social level, it created bad blood between...
I think it's just... MMOs are really just... You get the experience based on the people that you play with. You can just play with a bunch of people that like RP and like have fun and like enjoy the game in like a slow pace, or you can go with a bunch of sweaty, you know, sweat lords that do JDKPs and you want to parse and like, you know, get a big gold cut, right? If I didn't have DPS meters, I would just gatekeep by something arbitrary, like how many epics the guy has. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there will be ways to gatekeep regardless.
People because of DPS meters, and people feeling the social pressure of performing, they might end up pushing their cooldowns whenever they don't have to, and end up potentially wiping their raid because they didn't have the damage when they needed it, and created a severe lack of teamwork, which is just a symptom of people's insecurity that needed to be fed through the validation of a good overall DPS at the end of combat. And to further point out that DPS meters are not necessary to establish performance, to establish relevancy, to clear a content that's particularly difficult. We already have an example, a little bit of the cuff example, where Blizzard created the Proving Grounds a couple of expansions ago, where you went in a solo scenario, did something akin to what a dungeon situation would be, and you would receive a score at the end, whether it's silver or gold, and based on that score, you would be able to join or not join specific groups in terms of looking for people. Obviously,
yeah, but I mean, that I don't know. I think regardless of what you know, what kind of like, you know, way of gauging your skill level or your DPS or whatnot there is, there will always be ways of doing it, whether it's a DPS meter or like proving grounds or challenge modes or mythic plus score, Ryo score, whatever the hell, right? There always will, because it's just like a thing that we do as humans. We compare each other to each other in terms of like a video game, right? He just absolutely no valid point. I think he just doesn't not like DPS meters at all.
This has evolved into dungeon.
Yeah, it's not really. I don't remember. I remember doing this proving grounds, but I don't remember the actual. Did you just get like a gold, silver, like bronze medal? Is that pretty much it?
Plus score, but this was a little bit less invasive, a little bit less discriminatory, and if we're going to eliminate the DPS meters completely, we could just replace them with proving grounds. That's right?
No, man, this DPS meters are fun, man. Listen, I love looking over at the DPS meter and seeing if I pop off, okay? And if I don't pop off, well, I gotta get good then, right?
Well, listen, I know that you will contradict everything I said down in the comments.
I am.
But is it all bad?
Okay.
There are positives as well to the DPS meters being introduced because it created competitiveness.
Yeah.
Because of the DPS meters, we now have proper enraged timers and how to beat boss enraged timers, because now we know if the boss has 10 million HP and it gets the enrage in 6 minutes, we know to divide that HP by the time that we have left, and we need to kind of figure out what the DPS is to kill the boss before the enrage hits. It also
I mean, you would be able to figure that out regardless of DPS meters, I think.
created the concept of
Makes it easier,
obstacles
I
to
guess.
overcome by having performance being evaluated by a number, and of course it does help release some dopamine when you complete that challenge because you had really good performance, often showed by the DPS meter. The best
It's just fun. It's fun. It's interesting to see how pumpers get a boner from pumping. I just don't care. The thing that bothers me is certain gatekeeping when it comes to DPS. I don't really like. I think it's really fun, but I don't like. It's not like the end all be all for me. But I definitely do enjoy getting a lot of gear on a character and then seeing how good I can perform personally. And a way of gauging that is the DPS meter, right?
rewards and moments in WoW came after crushing
This is
content
fun.
with optimized playstyles that wouldn't have been possible without the concept of DPS meters. I mean, just look at these guys crushing Ragnaros in a speed kill 16, 17, 18 years ago with 33 Frost Mages, a bunch of tanks and healers. That's not that necessary. And this would not have been possible without DPS meters kind of telling them, okay, you need this amount of damage to get this boss done.
I mean, it would have definitely been possible. I mean, I don't know. There would be different ways of gauging it, right? Okay, you see this person. I don't know. I don't know about
That's
that.
one of the cool things that you can do with the DPS meters.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that.
DPS meters help to showcase performance, to measure your skill as a player, which definitely pushes people to progress and improve as individual players every time. Because
Listen, it's just a fun meter, man. Okay, you look over the DPS meter. How much fun am I having? I'm number one. I'm having the most fun, right?
it definitely helps to measure the difficulty of the content,
Yeah.
the efficiency of your build. It helps create achievements, competition, stakes, challenges, rewards, and accomplishments.
Yeah.
DPS meters also evolve to showcase useful data when it comes to improving, such as the healing done in a dungeon or a raid, the damage taken by the tanks, maybe you took too much damage, maybe you shouldn't have, the number of interrupts, dispels to kind of figure how to deal with the mechanics, and not even all of that, but complex raid interactions like ad swaps or damage
kinda
to
cool.
bosses, and even buffed damage now with the augmentation spec. And oh, of course, it also allowed for the concept of an augmentation spec to be introduced in WoW, because you wouldn't be able to have that without actual DPS
Okay.
meters. So, did the DPS meters destroy WoW?
No.
Ah, that dungeon was fun. What?
You barely did more than the tank. How can your damage be so low? Play Candy Crush.
Listen, man, regardless of... there would be other ways that people would yell at you, man, okay? Regardless of the DPS meter. I think it has very much to do with the people you play with. Because there's gonna be people like that guy yelling in the headset out of anything, right? You could take a piece of loot, you fail a mechanic, maybe you do other stuff, right? But honestly, I agree with the guy in the headphones too. Yeah.
Using your talent properly, why are you
I don't agree with the overall thing that he's trying to convey. Yeah. It's a people problem, yeah, I agree.
DPS meters were likely inevitable no matter what. It just depends on which side of the fence you are. The concept of such a system is necessary because the WoW content is timed. In Rage timers, like I mentioned earlier,
Anyways.
Mythic Plus timers, Arena dampening, all of these concepts essentially mean that you have to finish what you need to finish before a specific time is reached. And when you add the concept of time related to your damage output, then you will have to have some form of a DPS meter. And even
Not necessarily. I mean, like, I believe FF14 doesn't have a DPS meter at all. And I think a lot of people would argue that the FF14, like, what is it called, ultimates, are, like, even more difficult than Mythic rating in many aspects, right? And then they don't have any DPS meters there. So, you know, it's not a necessity. I just think DPS meters are fun, personally. They're just enjoyable. It's just like a fun little way of gauging stuff. There will always be people being toxic about things regardless, whether it's you fail a mechanic, taking a piece of loot, you know, like having a bad interaction in Goldshire Inn, you know, I don't know, that's how it goes. I played FF14, there are still DPS meters. I think there are, but they're not like, I think you're not allowed to have them. But I mean, people probably still use them, right? Because why the hell not?
even if the DPS meters
Nobody has cleared ultimates without DPS meters. Oh, okay, nobody has done it. Oh, okay. Well, never mind then.
were necessary and inevitable, they still destroyed an important aspect of World of Warcraft, and that is the aspect of fun. Playing a video game just for fun, which of course you can still do. You can still play WoW without a DPS meters and still have
It's a
fun.
people
You
problem.
can play more chill content like normal and heroic dungeons where performance, although obviously it's important, is not that crucial, where a DPS meter is necessary to kind of monitor. As long as you play your class relatively well, you'll be able to crush this content. Same with LFR or looking for raid, and maybe even normal raid after getting a lot of gear is content that can be done without min-maxing, without meta playing, without DPS meters, period. Ignore the chat and play how you like. Just don't play.
Just join a dungeon group, put everybody on ignore. What a great MMO experience. Feels like I'm playing League of Legends, man.
High stakes content that's super reliant on optimization, where the DPS meters are pretty much expected and your social group will judge you by it. Just have fun, because people definitely forgot how to have fun, and that's just a shame. Sure, Big Damn is really fun for some people, but not always. Enjoying the game and just not getting sucked up into this world is one way to improve your WoW experience, and there are more ways to improve your WoW experience, and we already cover 5 of them in this video, and I guarantee you that you will feel a lot better about logging into World of Warcraft by watching it.
I feel like it's just a people thing. Like, it's just who you surround yourself with. There is plenty of raid and dungeon groups and a lot of things that where you can just have fun. Like, you know, we did like a raid the other night where we just like had like a bunch of those Grinch mobs and we just like try to kill the bosses with that. We have some raids where we're just like RPing around. Like, it's really just up to your individual enjoyment. I think DPS meters, some people hate them, some people like them. I think they're fun. I think it's a fun way of gauging your kind of like overall damage, and it's just an enjoyable thing. You know, it's not the end all be all for me, but I enjoy it. I do see the point that he's trying to make, but I just don't necessarily agree too much with it, right? But majority of the players are like this. They sue content around numbers. Yeah, but that's just how players are.
Happy New Year, Xwalda Smile.
Happy New Year to you too. Jesus Kappa Christ, thank you for the 9 months. And Lex Dude, thank you for the 10 months as well. I think regardless of there being DPS meters or not, people will find a way to compare themselves to each other and gauge skill in some sort of way, right? IRO score, like Ryo score, gear, like achievements, whatever the hell, right? There will always be some sort of a thing like that. Here's the video though, chat. I mean, it's an interesting topic though. I don't necessarily agree with the overall point he's making, but I do understand what he's trying to get at for sure, right?